We saw the forest canopy opening unnaturally. It began with the quiet. Not the usual kind that settles into a forest after dusk, where sound fades but never disappears. This was different. The insects stopped first, their thin, constant hum thinning into nothing. Then the leaves went still, even though we'd felt wind not 10 minutes earlier. Even the fire seemed to hesitate, its small flames lowering, crackling less often, as if unsure it was allowed to keep making noise. We noticed it gradually. Arjun was the first to stop talking. He'd been in the middle of a story, something about getting lost on a trail years ago, but the words just ended. Not finished. Not interrupted. Simply abandoned. Lena looked up from where she sat cross-legged by the fire. Why'd you stop? He didn't answer right away. He was listening. We all were, though none of us had said it yet. Dev shifted beside me, adjusting his jacket. You hear that? He asked. Lena frowned. Hear what? That's the point, I said. Because there was nothing. No insects. No wind. No distant movement. Just the four of us in the faint, uncertain breathing of the fire. The forest around us held. Like something had pressed pause. Temperature drop, Dev said, though it sounded more like a guess than a conclusion. Happens sometimes. But the air didn't feel like cooling. It felt suspended. Thick. My breath didn't fog, but it didn't disperse naturally either, it lingered for a fraction too long before fading. Arjun tilted his head back. Hey, he said quietly. We followed his gaze. At first, nothing stood out. The canopy above us was dense, layers of branches and leaves woven tightly together, blocking most of the sky. Only thin fractures of darkness peeked through. Then the branches moved. Not with wind. They parted. Slowly. Deliberately. Leaves folded back against themselves. Smaller branches bent aside without snapping or scraping. The motion was smooth, controlled, like something unseen was guiding them outward. Lena stood up. That's not normal. The gap above widened. More branches shifted, making space where there shouldn't have been any. The canopy didn't thin, it rearranged. A patch of sky appeared. Black. Deeper than it should have been. Finally, Dev muttered, stars. But even as he said it, something about the light above felt wrong. The points weren't scattered the way stars are. They were too evenly spaced in some areas, too clustered in others. And they didn't flicker the way distant light should through moving leaves. They held. Steady. Defined. One of them blinked. Dev stopped breathing. What was that? Another blinked. Then two more. The realization didn't come all at once. It built slowly, resisting acceptance. They're not stars, Lena whispered. Arjun didn't look away. No, he said. They're not. They were eyes. Once seen that way, they couldn't be anything else. Some were small, like pinpricks of light. Others were larger, oval-shaped, their edges soft against the surrounding dark. A few were enormous, so large they seemed to curve with the unseen shape of something beyond the opening. And they blinked, independently, at irregular intervals. No pattern, no rhythm, just a constant, uneven cycle of closing and opening. They're looking at us, Dev said. But even as he said it, we knew that wasn't true. Because their focus didn't shift. Their positions adjusted slightly, drifting, realigning, but not in response to our movement. They weren't tracking us. They weren't watching. Then what are they doing? Lena asked. No one answered. Because something about the way they existed suggested a different purpose entirely. Arjun stepped back from the fire. We're leaving, he said. No one argued. We moved quickly, but not chaotically. Packs were pulled together. Straps tightened. Movements controlled. The quiet pressed against us, discouraging sudden noise. Above, the canopy continued to open. The gap widened. More eyes revealed. The black beyond was no longer a patch, it was an expanse. Filled. Layered. Occupied. Dev zipped his pack and stood. Which way? Arjun turned, scanning the surrounding trees. That way, he said, pointing toward where we'd come from. But the forest had changed. The path wasn't there. Or if it was, it had been obscured. Trees shifted just enough to erase the familiar spacing, the subtle markers we'd followed earlier. That's not right, Lena said. It was, Arjun replied. We turned slowly, searching for any recognizable feature. Everything looked the same. Dense trunks, thick undergrowth, no clear direction. Above us, the eyes blinked. More frequently now. Pick a direction, Dev said. We can't stay here. Arjun nodded. We moved. The forest resisted. Not directly. Not in any way you could point to and say this is happening, but through small, accumulating disruptions. Roots caught at our boots. Branches leaned into our path. The ground sloped unpredictably. And the silence persisted. Our footsteps sounded wrong. Too loud one moment, too soft the next. As if the forest were deciding how much of us to allow. Keep going, Arjun said. We did. The trees thinned slightly ahead. A break. Another clearing. Larger than the first. And fully exposed. The canopy above it had already opened completely. The sky, if it could still be called that, stretched wide overhead, an immense black field filled entirely with eyes. Thousands. No. More. Impossible to count. They varied wildly in size and shape. Some small and sharp, others elongated, their forms subtly distorted. A few, too few, uncannily human. Lena stopped at the edge of the clearing. Don't step in yet, she said. Why? Dev asked. I don't know. Just wait. We stood there, looking up. The eyes blinked. Not in unison. Not yet. But more frequently now. Faster. As if something were changing. Arjun stepped forward anyway. Into the clearing. I don't think it matters, he said. The moment he crossed the threshold, I felt it. A shift. Subtle. But undeniable. Do you feel that? I asked. Dev frowned. What? Like the grounds. Off. Lena stepped in beside Arjun. Then Dev. Then me. The sensation grew clearer. Not movement exactly. But imbalance. As if we were standing on something that wasn't fully stable. Not physically unstable. Our footing held. But something beneath it felt misaligned. The eyes above blinked again. More of them now. The largest ones lingered open longer. Their focus narrowing. Not toward us. Through us. Down. Lena said. We all looked at the ground. At first, nothing changed. Just dirt. Roots. Scattered debris. Then, a ripple. Subtle. A slight lift in the soil. Then stillness. Dev exhaled slowly. Did you? Yeah, Arjun said. The pressure built. Not on the skin. Inside. A faint pull. Downward. The eyes above began to align. Not all. But some. The largest. Their orientation shifted, their gaze narrowing toward the center of the clearing. Toward us. Or rather, toward what was beneath us. They're not looking at us, I said. No, Lena replied. They're looking at that. The ground trembled. More noticeably this time. The ripple returned. Stronger. Something below was moving. Closer. The forest reacted. The trees around the clearing leaned inward, their branches stretching toward the opening, as if trying to close it. But they couldn't. The canopy remained parted. Held open. The eyes blinked. Faster. More frequently. Until, for the first time, they all closed. At once. Darkness swallowed the clearing. Total. Absolute. Then, they opened. And the pressure snapped into focus. A direction. A force. Down. Dev stumbled. What is that? Arjun dropped to one knee, bracing himself. Something's pulling. I felt it too. Not on my body. But inside it. Like something within me was being drawn toward the ground. The soil cracked. A thin line at first. Then wider. Roots split with soft, fibrous sounds. The darkness beneath was deeper than the sky above. Denser. Alive with something unseen. Lena grabbed my arm. What is that? I couldn't answer. Because I understood. Not completely. But enough. It's not coming out, I said. What? Dev asked. It's already here. The eyes weren't watching the forest. They weren't watching us. They were watching a boundary. And that boundary was failing. The crack widened. Something pressed upward. Not a shape. Not something visible. Just presence. Mass. Awareness. The trees strained, bending further inward, branches lowering as if to push the ground closed. But they couldn't stop it. They could only slow it. The eyes. They didn't intervene. They didn't react. They waited. The realization settled, cold and heavy. They're not here to see it, Lena whispered. They're here to mark it, I said. To mark what? Dev asked. The moment it looks back, the ground split further. The pressure surged, and the eyes above, all of them, blinking in unison, held open, as if expecting something, waiting for a signal from below. And then, for a fraction of a second, before the forest bent inward completely, before the crack widened beyond anything we could understand, I felt it, not with sight, not with sound, but with something deeper. A gaze, rising, meeting theirs, and in that impossible alignment, I understood the final truth. The eyes were not watching the forest. They were waiting for the forest to open, so something beneath it could finally learn how to see. Their campsite was surrounded by trees that bled light. At first, it looked like someone else had been there before us. Thin streaks of pale brightness marked the bark of the trees around the campsite, faint, irregular lines that caught the last of the evening light and held it longer than they should have. From a distance, it could have been sap reflecting the sunset, or old trail paint worn into strange shapes. But as we got closer, the light didn't fade. It deepened. Do you see that? Maya asked, setting her pack down slowly, like she didn't want to disturb whatever it was. Ethan nodded, stepping toward the nearest tree. Yeah, looks like resin. I didn't say anything at first. I was watching the way it moved. Because it wasn't static. The light didn't glow from the bark, it seeped. Thin, hairline cracks ran along the trunk, and from within them, a dim, cold brightness pushed outward, like liquid under pressure. It gathered at knots and seams, bulging slightly before spilling down in slow, viscous threads. Don't touch it, I said, just as Ethan reached out. He paused, hand hovering inches from the trunk. Why? I don't know, I admitted. Just don't. He withdrew his hand. The three of us stood there for a moment, taking it in. The campsite itself was otherwise ordinary. Flat ground, a fire ring built from old stones, a couple of weathered posts marking the edge of the clearing. It was the kind of place that showed up on maps but rarely saw visitors. Remote enough to feel isolated. Not deep enough to feel dangerous. At least, that's what we'd thought. Maybe it's some kind of fungus, Maya said. Bioluminescent stuff. I've seen pictures. It's not glowing, I said. She frowned. What do you mean? I gestured toward the tree. Look at how it comes out. It's not radiating. It's coming from inside. Ethan leaned closer, squinting. It does look like it's under the bark. A thin line of light traced downward from a split in the trunk, thickening slightly as it reached a knot. It pooled there, forming a small, luminous bead before spilling over and dripping onto the ground. The droplet didn't soak into the soil. It spread, flattening into a shallow, glowing film that clung to the surface, outlining small stones and bits of debris in sharp relief. That's not normal, Maya said. No, I agreed. We should have left then. Packed up, turned around, driven back down the long gravel road before the light fully drained from the sky. But we didn't, because the rest of the forest looked normal. The trees beyond the clearing stood dark and still, their bark unmarked. The strange light seemed contained to the ring of trees surrounding the campsite, as if the phenomenon had chosen this place specifically. It's probably nothing, Ethan said finally. Some weird local thing. Minerals, maybe. Minerals don't leak, I said. He shrugged. You know what I mean. Maya exhaled slowly. We came all this way. I'm not hiking back out in the dark. That settled it. We stayed. By the time we had the tent set up and the fire going, the light had changed. It wasn't brighter, but it was more visible. As the natural light faded, the bleeding seams in the trees stood out more clearly, thin veins of pale illumination tracing the contours of the bark. The pools on the ground had spread further, connecting in places, forming irregular shapes that filled the spaces between roots and stones. The fire should have dominated the clearing. It didn't. Its warm, flickering glow felt contained, almost dim compared to the colder, steadier light seeping from the trees. Okay, Maya said, staring at the ground. That's getting weird. The pooled light had begun to move. Not flowing, not like liquid, but shifting. Edges creeping outward in some places, receding in others. As if responding to something we couldn't see. Ethan tossed a small stick into the fire. Probably just settling into the ground. Look at it, she said. We did. The edge of one of the glowing patches crept toward the firelight, then stopped abruptly, holding a clear boundary where the two lights met. It's avoiding the fire, Maya said. No, I said slowly. It's reacting to it. As if to confirm that, the patch shifted again, pulling slightly away, then pressing forward, testing the boundary. The shadows around us deepened. Not in a way that made sense. The firelight should have cast long, flickering shapes from the trees, stretching them outward across the ground. And it did, but the shadows didn't stay where they were cast. They moved, slowly, independently. I noticed it first on the tree to my left. Its shadow stretched across the ground as expected, but the edges didn't align with the trunk. They drifted, pulling slightly away, as if the shape of the tree in shadow wasn't matching the tree itself. Do you see that? I asked. Ethan followed my gaze. Yeah. That's wrong, Maya finished. The shadow shifted again, the outline bending at an angle the trunk didn't follow. Then it stopped, perfectly still. The silence settled heavier. It wasn't just the absence of sound now. It felt imposed, like something had pressed down on the clearing, muting everything beyond a certain threshold. Even the fire seemed quieter. The usual crackle and pop reduced to soft, dampened sounds, as if heard through a barrier. Ethan stood up. I'm going to check the perimeter, he said. Why? Maya asked. Because I don't like not knowing what's going on. I watched him as he moved toward the edge of the clearing. The closer he got to the trees, the brighter the light appeared, not because it intensified, but because it gathered more densely along the bark, thickening in the cracks. Don't step into it, I called. I won't. He crouched near one of the trunks, careful to keep his feet on the darker patches of ground. Up close, it's deeper, he said. Like it's not just on the surface. It goes in. How far? Maya asked. He leaned closer, peering into one of the seams. I can't tell. It just keeps going. The light pulsed. Not visibly, not in brightness, but in presence. A subtle shift that made the air around it feel different, denser. Ethan jerked back slightly. What? I asked. It. He paused. It moved. The light. No. Something under it. Maya stood. What do you mean, something? I don't know. I just. He shook his head. Forget it. It's probably just the way it's flowing. But his voice lacked conviction. He stepped back toward the fire. The moment he crossed the boundary where the pooled light ended, the shadows shifted again. More sharply this time. The outline of Ethan's shadow detached slightly from his body, lagging behind his movement before snapping back into alignment. He stopped. So you saw that too, he said. Yes, I replied. Maya wrapped her arms around herself. I don't like this. None of us did. But we didn't leave. Not yet. It got worse as the night deepened. The light from the trees didn't fade. It spread. The pools on the ground expanded, connecting more fully until most of the clearing was covered in a thin, luminous layer, leaving only small islands of darkness around the fire and beneath our tents. The shadows grew more unstable. They stretched and twisted, sometimes moving when we didn't, sometimes holding still when we shifted position. At one point, I noticed 3 shadows cast by the same tree, each angled differently, each moving at its own pace. That's not possible, Maya whispered. No, I said. It's not. The silence pressed harder. It felt like pressure in the ears, like descending too quickly without equalizing. Every sound we made seemed muted, swallowed before it could fully form. Ethan tried to speak louder at one point, raising his voice. The light reacted. Every glowing seam in the trees flared slightly, just for a moment. Then dimmed. We all froze. Did you see that? He asked. Don't. I said. Don't what? Don't make loud noises. He frowned. Why? Because it responds. We tested it. Carefully. A quiet word. No change. A louder one. The light shifted again, pulsing outward along the cracks. A sudden clap. Sharp. Abrupt. The entire ring of trees flared. The light surged, spilling more rapidly from the seams, pooling faster on the ground. And the shadows. They recoiled, pulling inward toward the bases of the trees, compressing as if retreating from the sudden brightness. Maya stepped back. It's reacting to us. Or to sound, Ethan said. Or to something sound triggers, I replied. We fell silent again. The light settled. The shadows stretched back out. But something had changed. The patterns of the light on the ground had shifted. They weren't random anymore. They formed lines. Subtle at first, but increasingly clear. Thin channels connecting the bases of the trees, running along the ground in a rough circular pattern around the clearing. Is that new? Maya asked. Yes, I said. Ethan crouched near one of the lines. It's thicker here. Like it's flowing more in those spots, Maya said. Or being directed, I added. We followed the lines with our eyes. They looped around the clearing, intersecting in places, forming a kind of network. A boundary. The realization came slowly. This isn't just light, I said. What do you mean? Ethan asked. It's not illuminating the trees, I said. It's outlining something. Outlining what? I looked at the pattern again. At the way the lines connected. At the way they formed a perimeter. Not what? I said. Where? Maya's voice dropped to a whisper. You think it's containing something? I nodded. Ethan shook his head. No. That's just. The ground shifted. Slightly. A soft, almost imperceptible movement beneath the layer of light. We all felt it. None of us spoke. The light pulsed again. Stronger. The seams in the trees brightened, the flow increasing, feeding the lines on the ground. And the shadows. They pressed inward, flattening against the edges of the light. As if held there. It's not just containing, Maya said slowly. It's holding. Something inside the circle, Ethan said. No, I said. They both looked at me. It's holding something back. The realization didn't make it better. It made everything worse. Because if the light was holding something back, then we were on the wrong side of it. We should have left then. But by the time we understood, it was too late. The forest beyond the ring of trees had changed. When Ethan tried to walk past the boundary, the light reacted instantly. The nearest seams flared, the pooled lines thickening, rising slightly, just enough to block his path. He stepped back. It won't let us out. Or it won't let something else in, Maya said. Then why are we inside? He shot back. No one answered. Because the ground shifted again. Stronger this time. A slow, rolling motion beneath the surface, like something large adjusting its position. The shadows reacted. They stretched toward the center of the clearing, pulling away from the edges of the light. Why are they doing that? Maya asked. I didn't answer. Because I was watching the lines. They were thinning. Not everywhere. But in certain places. Small breaks forming in the pattern. Look, I said. Ethan followed my gaze. That wasn't there before. The line near the base of one tree flickered, dimmed slightly. The flow from the seam above it slowed. It's failing, Maya whispered. No, I said. It's weakening. The ground shifted again, more forcefully. The soil beneath the light bulged slightly, then settled. The shadows surged forward, not fully crossing the lines, but pressing against them, testing. The light flared in response. Brighter. Faster. But not enough to fully push them back. It can't hold it, Ethan said. What happens when it stops? Maya asked. No one answered. Because we all knew. The light pulsed again, then flickered. For the first time since we'd arrived, it dimmed noticeably. The seams in the trees thinned, the flow slowing. The lines on the ground broke in more places. The pattern fractured. And the shadows. They moved. Not drifting. Not shifting. Advancing. Slowly. Deliberately. Crossing the first broken line. Spreading into the clearing. The silence deepened. Until even our breathing felt too loud. The ground beneath us rose slightly. Then fell. And something, just beneath the surface, moved. The light flared once more. Desperate. Thin streams spilling faster from the cracks in the trees, trying to fill the gaps. But it was too slow. Too weak. The shadows reached the center of the clearing. And for the first time, they aligned. Not with the trees. Not with us. But with something beneath. Maya grabbed my arm. What is that? I looked down. The light beneath our feet had thinned enough to reveal the ground clearly. And there, faintly visible through the soil, were shapes. Not roots. Not rocks. Impressions. Large. Irregular. as if something enormous had been pressing upward from below for a very long time. Waiting. The light flickered again, and this time, it didn't recover. The seams in the trees dimmed. The flow slowed to a trickle. The lines broke completely. The boundary collapsed. The shadows surged forward, filling the clearing, covering the ground, rising slightly, not as forms, but as presence. And in that moment, as the last threads of light bled weakly from the trees, I understood. The light had never been there to protect us. It had been there to keep something from reaching us. And now, with the light failing, the thing beneath the ground no longer needed to stay below. Because it wasn't trying to get out. It was trying to meet the dark.